Welcome everybody to the Lawtee Podcast. Now we're going to settle in for a little chat today about divorce, and we have the lovely Camille with us. So Camille, obviously, I've met you a few times now, and one thing I have to say that I love about you is the fact that having gone through divorce, you're very open and honest and quite candid about that experience, and quite open to sharing what you learned from it, which is hard in itself and actually quite brave. So one thing Camille's come here to talk to us about today is the costly mistakes to avoid in divorce. And no one knows them better than the lady herself. So just going to go straight into it. So what do you think are the most common costly mistakes that you've seen as a divorce coach that people make?
So one of the ones that I'm actually guilty of is calling my solicitor and crying down the phone to her and using her as a therapist or a divorce coach.
So you sort of leaning on your lawyer too much as a therapist, as opposed to, which I suppose is easy to do because a lawyer outside of the breakdown can sometimes be the first neutral outlet that you've had to, because friends and family, as well being as they may be, have always got their own opinions and bits and bobs. Whereas when you're actually talking to a lawyer, it's like a neutral space and you probably offload quite a lot.
Yes, and it's also someone that you absolutely do need when you go through a divorce. So you probably haven't spoken to anyone before. The lawyers are great at law, but they're not trained in the emotional roller coaster of emotions that you go through. They're not. They're lovely, but they're also very expensive. So if you're calling them I was and spending hours telling them what your ex has done, how that's affecting you, and you don't know how to move forward, and you're, showing them all the text messages, emailing them, it's costing you money and you're not getting much in return. At the same time, your solicitor needs to work on your case, needs to have all the information there, all the documents, and that is how best to help them.
Yeah. So actually, you tend to focus on the emotional overwhelm as opposed to what is actually going to help the lawyer, make progress with your case. It's a really good point, actually. So another one that you touched on before was the sharing too much with your children, which I think, I've seen this happen a lot. So how do you think there's a way to avoid doing that? Or what would you suggest to parents when you're going through divorce? Obviously, you're around your children. How can you best address that mistake?
Adult issues need to remain adult issues, and children just need reassurance, know that it's not their fault, and told that they are loved. That's it. Otherwise, they feel that they have to choose a parent, they end up being anxious, and it can cause them mental health problems later on in life.
So you think it's best to sort of not to talk about the breakup around them, or
don't blame the other parent. Legal issues, financial issues you might be dealing with, just got to try and limit the conflict as much as possible. And to just keep reassuring the child that this is not their fault and that you love them. That's the best way forward.
Fault is an interesting one, I guess, because a lot of children, they do blame themselves. And I think a lot of friends I've had that have gone through having parents divorce in their childhood sometimes carry that guilt into that adulthood. So they actually I read an article actually in the Times recently about the children of divorced parents and some of that guilt that they carry with them. And I guess it's it's not your fault, and it's having your parents say that is what you really need to hear.
Absolutely. And it doesn't come from bad intentions, just as parents don't know and they offload a bit too much than they should be.
Which is I guess it's in that moment, it's natural, right? So another one you mentioned as well before was being too amicable, so what do you think goes on there?
So people want to keep the peace, and sometimes it'll be at their own detriment. They'll say yes to things, so they'll say yes, for example, not to using a lawyer because the ex-husband says, oh, that's the best way and it'll be cheaper. Then they'll agree to things not fully understanding everything. And the solution to that is putting boundaries, but being kind, but also educating yourself on what you're signing, what the other person is suggesting.
Yeah, I guess like going back to your point about not using your lawyer as a therapist, it's actually like, but still having that lawyer there instead of getting it locked into arguments. Like this is the lawyer is there for having these conversations, like as a sort of mediator between two. And then I feel like having that lawyer there puts that boundary in place between having unhealthy conversations, would you say?
Absolutely. And I've heard it all too often where the other partner is saying, let's not use a lawyer, and they're agreeing to it. And there are issues later on. What I find as well is some people try and avoid the pain that they're going through, and they just want immediate relief. So they'll sign away property, children's rights, whatever they can, just to move forward as quickly as possible. And you might not be able, you might move out, but then you realize you can't afford another house.
Yeah, wow. It's a really good point, actually. It's like, and I think having had friends go through divorce, you feel like you're stuck in that moment. However, like, that's a really positive thing. It's like you are going to feel differently going forward. And I think like taking some time to reflect. We've all made decisions in the heat of the moment, and when you're going through divorce, it's something you just need to give you. I guess actually, just thinking out loud here, but that's why it is very useful to have a divorce coach, because you can talk through your emotions and like maybe answer some of those questions about where you want to be in the future, and think about how the decisions you make now can help you get there.
Absolutely. And ask yourself, would I be happy with this decision in 5 years' time? How will it impact me?
That's a good one. Yeah.
Or am I just trying to solve the relief, or try and heal from this quicker?
That's a really good question. How will I feel in 5 years' time for making the decisions? One I might start using on, not that I'm going through divorce, but you can use that for a lot of decisions that you make. Another one which I found really interesting, and you and I have spoke about this before, not just in the context of divorce, but family feuds and everything else. So putting too much online in a breakup, and it's not just divorces, it's kind of like breakups in general tend to get aired online a lot. So what, as a divorce coach, would be your advice for people as approaching online content when going through divorce?
This is the other one where I would revert to ask yourself, would I be happy about this in 6 months or even 5 years down the line?
Yeah.
And would I be happy reading these posts out loud in court? Because these posts can be used as evidence against you.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So that's the thing. I think like sharing stuff online, it kind of anchors you to a moment of how you're feeling, as opposed to like just processing that privately, and then you might feel differently the next day.
And you get more clicks, don't you? It's all about emotions, what you're showing online.
It's a very interesting one, isn't it? It's so like relevant to today, because we tend to use social media for a lot of things that we don't need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think divorce is, wow. So again, I suppose it does come back to having someone to talk to outside of.
Definitely. A therapist, a coach, a friend. You need to have your own support network. And in that support network, you can have a lawyer, but then you need to have the other bits in place. The more support you have, the more help you'll have in moving forward quicker with the right answers to complicated questions later on.
I love that. And I'm just going to finish with a final question. So, like, having gone through divorce yourself, if there's one thing that you'd want people to know going through divorce that you wish that you'd known, what would it be?
I didn't know all the help that was out there.
Nice.
And I wish I'd known and taken the time. The thing is, I was stuck during lockdown with my ex-husband, so there was a lot of time there to think and to go over things, but I wish I'd had more support, especially more emotional support. I wish I'd got a coach, to be honest.
Wow. And there you go.
There we go. That's
a really good thing to end on, actually. So thank you so much for coming in today. Thank you everybody for joining in today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.